A young millionaire married a poor girl to escape an arranged marriage without knowing who she really was. Before we dive into the story, comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The night was calm, but inside the Hayes mansion, the atmosphere was heavy. The dining table was set with its usual elegance, but Ryan barely touched his food. He knew something was coming. His parents, Marcus and Evelyn, had urgently requested his presence, but they hadn't given him many details. He was used to discussions about business and family responsibilities, but tonight felt different. "Ryan," Marcus began, wiping his lips with a napkin before fixing him with that authoritative gaze. "It's time for you to truly step into your role in this family." Ryan raised an eyebrow, feeling the unease grow in his chest. "And what exactly does that mean?" Evelyn, always poised, forced a smile before chiming in. "It means we've found the ideal person for you to marry. It's the best decision for you and for the company." Ryan's breath caught for a moment. "Marry?" His voice was filled with disbelief. He let out a short, almost nervous laugh. "You can't be serious." "We're not joking," Marcus replied without hesitation. "Her name is Olga Petrova. She's the daughter of the biggest oil tycoon in Russia. A union with the Petrova family would secure strategic agreements that could solidify our company's future." It felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under Ryan. "You want me to marry someone I've never met? For what? To benefit the business?" Evelyn placed a hand on her son's shoulder, trying to soften the blow. "Ryan, dear, Olga is an amazing woman. Yes, she's 45, but she's mature, intelligent, and—" "45?" Ryan interrupted, almost laughing in disbelief. "She's 18 years older than me. Does that even make sense? Have you even considered what I want?" Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware clatter. "Stop being so immature, Ryan. This isn't about what you want. It's about what's best for this family. You're privileged to be part of something great, but that comes with sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" Ryan stood, his face red with anger. "You want me to sacrifice my happiness, my freedom, my life? You don't care about me. You only care about the damn company." Evelyn tried to intervene, her tone calm but condescending. "Ryan, don't be dramatic. Olga is a sophisticated woman. You'll learn to admire her, to like her. These things take time." Ryan laughed bitterly. "Admire her? I don't even know her. You're pushing me toward a woman who could be my aunt. All for money. How do you think this could possibly end well?" Marcus stood, facing Ryan directly. "If you don't accept this, you'll be on your own, Ryan. No company, no family support. Is that what you want? Because I won't let you destroy everything I've built over a whim." The word alone echoed in Ryan's mind like a blow to his chest. He knew his father was stubborn, but he never thought he would threaten him so cruelly. His eyes welled up, but he held back the tears. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him weak. "So that's how it is?" Ryan replied, his voice firm but laced with pain. "Either I obey or I'm discarded like I mean nothing to you." Evelyn tried to step closer, but Ryan raised his hand, signaling her to stop. "No, Mom, don't say anything else. You've made it clear. I'm just a tool to you. Just another piece in the family's business chessboard." Without waiting for a response, Ryan pushed his chair back and left the room, leaving his parents stunned. He walked through the mansion's entryway, grabbed his car keys, and got into his car without a second thought. The sound of the engine was the only thing that broke the suffocating silence of the night. As he drove through the empty city streets, his father's words kept echoing in his mind. "You'll be on your own." Was that what he'd have to face? He loved his family, but he couldn't live at the expense of his own dignity. He needed to get away, think clearly, and figure out what to do with his life. Ryan drove to wherever his thoughts led him, a small coastal town he had visited as a child. Little did he know, this impulsive decision would mark the beginning of a new journey. There, he hoped to find peace. But what awaited him was far greater than anything he could have imagined. Ryan woke up the next morning to the sound of waves gently crashing on the shore. He had driven through the night and parked in front of a small hotel in the coastal town of Fairhaven, a place that felt frozen in time. The streets were quiet, lined with simple wooden houses, and the air carried the salty breeze of the ocean. For the first time in months, he felt far from the chaos, though the weight of his confrontation with his parents still lingered in his mind. After checking into the hotel, Ryan decided to explore the town. He needed coffee and, more than that, a distraction. That's when he spotted a small corner cafe with outdoor tables and an old sign that read, Seaside Cafe. As soon as he stepped inside, he was greeted by the aroma of fresh coffee and something sweet, maybe apple pie. It was a modest but cozy place, with shelves full of used books and framed vintage photos of the town. Behind the counter, a young woman was helping customers. She seemed completely at ease, smiling at each person like they were an old friend. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and her flour-dusted apron hinted at a morning spent baking. She was unlike anyone Ryan had ever met. "Good morning," she said as Ryan approached the counter. "What can I get for you? We've got the best coffee in town." Or at least that's what Mr. Bill over there says every morning. She nodded toward an older man sitting by the window, who raised his mug in confirmation. For the first time in days, Ryan smiled. "I'll trust Mr. Bill then. A coffee, please." As she prepared his drink, Ryan took in the cafe's atmosphere. People came and went, greeting her by name. She seemed to know everyone. When she handed him the coffee, Ryan noticed her name tag, Emily. "You're not from around here, are you?" Emily asked, tilting her head curiously. "I usually recognize every face that walks through that door." "No, just passing through," Ryan replied, careful not to share too much. "I needed a break from the big city." She smiled, as though she understood perfectly. "Fairhaven's good for that. Things are simpler here." Ryan was quiet for a moment, absorbing the simplicity of the place. He took a sip of his coffee and realized it was, indeed, very good. "Have you worked here long?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation going. "A few years now," Emily said, wiping down the counter as she spoke. "It's not exactly where I thought I'd be, but it's where I am for now." There was something in her tone, a mix of melancholy and acceptance. "And where did you think you'd be?" Ryan asked before he could stop himself. He was genuinely curious, but didn't want to seem intrusive. Emily hesitated, glancing out the window. "I used to dream of being an artist. I loved painting, drawing, but life had other plans." She shrugged and shifted the conversation. "What about you? What brings you here besides escaping the city?" Ryan felt a pang in his chest. He didn't want to talk about the real reason, the arranged marriage, Olga, or the fight with his parents. Just needed some time to think. Things got a little complicated. Emily looked at him with a mix of empathy and curiosity, but didn't press. "Well, I hope you find what you're looking for, and if you need more coffee, you know where to find me." Ryan left the cafe with a strange feeling. Emily was unlike anyone he knew from his life in the corporate elite. She was genuine, authentic, and carried a quiet strength he couldn't ignore. Later that day, as he walked along the beach, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about Emily. There was something about her that seemed to speak directly to him, as if she understood what it felt like to be lost, searching for something more in life. He wondered what her story was, what had made her give up her dreams and stay in Fairhaven. The next morning, he returned to the cafe, and so began an unexpected routine. With each visit, Ryan and Emily talked more. He learned that she was raising her younger brother, Jack, after losing their parents in a car accident years ago. Jack was her priority, and any dreams she had were put aside to give him stability. Ryan, in turn, shared small glimpses of his life, but avoided its darker details. He spoke about feeling trapped by his family's expectations, as if he were living a life that wasn't truly his. "Sounds like we both know what it's like to put our dreams on hold," Emily said one day with quiet honesty. "The difference is, in my case, I didn't have a choice." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. He knew she was right. He still had a choice, but he was afraid to make it. The days in Fairhaven started to turn into weeks. Ryan had become a regular at the Seaside Cafe, and his presence was now noticed by everyone, especially Emily. Despite being reserved, there was something about him that intrigued her. Ryan was kind, polite, and seemed genuinely interested in the little things she said, something Emily wasn't used to. One sunny morning, Ryan walked into the cafe with a more relaxed smile than usual. He had decided that, for once, he would try to be more open. "Good morning, Emily. You're always so busy here. Don't you ever get tired of doing everything on your own?" She laughed softly as she filled a coffee mug. "Believe it or not, I'm used to it. It's part of the routine. But I like what I do. It's simple and, well, predictable." "Predictable sounds like a good thing," Ryan replied, reflecting on how his life had been anything but that. But it seems like you deserve something more. Something exciting. Emily paused for a moment, her eyes meeting Ryan's. Maybe I do, but sometimes life doesn't give us a choice. When someone depends on you, your priorities change. Ryan realized she was talking about Jack, her younger brother. He had heard Emily mention him a few times, but never in detail. Jack's lucky to have you, Ryan said sincerely. Not everyone would sacrifice so much for someone else. Emily shrugged, trying not to show too much emotion. He's my family. After our parents passed away, someone had to take care of him. He was only 10 at the time. He's 16 now, but I still need to be around to make sure he has a better future. Ryan felt a pang in his chest. He had never had to carry such a burden, but he understood the feeling of being trapped by expectations, in his case, his parents. Have you ever thought about going back to painting? From what you've said, it sounded like something you truly loved. Emily gave a light laugh, but her smile carried a hint of sadness. Maybe one day, when things settle down. For now, Jack comes first. Ryan remained silent, admiring Emily's strength. She was someone who carried so much yet still managed to smile. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, especially in the world of appearances and ambition where he had grown up. A few days later, Ryan was sitting at a table in the cafe, reading a local newspaper, when Emily approached with a plate of apple pie. Here, on the house. You're here so often, I think you've earned a little treat. Ryan smiled, surprised. Thanks, but this feels like a bribe to keep me coming back. Emily shrugged with a smile. Maybe. We can't afford to lose our best customer. As he ate, they began to talk more deeply. Ryan, still hesitant to reveal his true identity, only shared bits of the truth. He mentioned that he came from a wealthy family, but left out the details about the arranged marriage or the fight with his parents. Instead, he said he was in Fairhaven to reorganize his life. Emily, in turn, began to lower her guard. She shared stories of her childhood, the challenges of caring for Jack, and even a few dreams she still held on to, like opening a small art studio in town. And what about you, Ryan? What do you want out of life? She asked suddenly, catching him off guard. Ryan stayed quiet, staring at the coffee cup in front of him. I don't know. I think I'm trying to figure that out right now. For the first time, I'm free from all the expectations, and it's both scary and liberating. Emily nodded, understanding completely. I know what it's like to feel like everyone expects something from you, but in the end, you have to decide what really matters. Otherwise, you'll never be happy. Ryan wanted to ask how she managed to maintain such clarity despite everything she had been through, but he was interrupted when Emily's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her expression changed. Apologizing, she stepped away to take the call, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts. Later that night, Ryan couldn't get Emily out of his mind. He wondered what had made her so serious during the phone call. He also knew that, eventually, he would have to tell her the truth about who he was. It wasn't fair to build this connection without being honest. But how would she react when she found out he was a wealthy heir running away from an arranged marriage with the daughter of an oil tycoon? While Ryan was lost in thought, Emily was dealing with her own struggles. The phone call was from her father's lawyer, someone she hadn't wanted to hear from in years. He mentioned that her father's estate, left behind by a disgraced tycoon who had ruined many lives, was now available to her, but with certain conditions. Emily knew that accepting the money would mean revisiting a past she had spent years trying to bury. This new pressure only deepened her inner conflict. On one hand, the money could solve many problems, especially those tied to Jack's future. On the other hand, her father's name still carried a negative weight, and she feared the repercussions of associating with it again. That night, as she lay in bed, the thought of Ryan brought her a small sense of comfort. He was an unexpected presence in her life, someone who seemed to see her for who she really was, beyond appearances and past stigmas. But like her, he was carrying something he wasn't ready to share. In the days that followed, Ryan and Emily grew closer. They began meeting more often, both in and outside the cafe. Ryan learned that Emily had a quiet passion for abstract painting, while Emily discovered that Ryan appreciated classical music, a love passed down from his mother. Their conversations were light, But beneath the surface, an unspoken intimacy quietly grew. But there was a problem. They were both hiding secrets. One evening at the cafe, Ryan helped Emily stack the chairs while Jack, her teenage brother, finished cleaning the counter. Jack, sharp and observant, watched Ryan with curiosity, as though trying to figure him out. "So Ryan, what exactly do you do in the big city?" Jack asked casually, though there was a hint of suspicion in his voice. Ryan hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. He knew he couldn't tell the whole truth. "I used to work with my family, but I decided to take a break. Life got a bit complicated, you know?" Jack didn't seem convinced, but Emily, sensing Ryan's discomfort, stepped in. "Jack, why don't you finish cleaning the kitchen? It's getting late." Jack rolled his eyes but obeyed. Once he was out of earshot, Emily turned to Ryan, crossing her arms. "You don't have to share anything you're not ready to, but sometimes it feels like you're running from something." Ryan looked at her, guilt rising in his chest. He knew she was right. "You're not wrong. I am running, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet." Emily nodded, respecting his boundaries, though her curiosity remained. She too carried secrets she wasn't ready to share, so she understood how it felt to keep something painful to yourself. The next day, Emily received another call from her father's lawyer. This time, he was more direct. Her family's estate was available, but to access it, she would need to attend a formal meeting with other members of the company's board. Emily hung up the phone with a knot in her stomach. The money could change her and Jack's lives, but it meant reopening a door she had kept shut for years. Later that afternoon, Ryan came into the cafe, as usual. He immediately noticed something was off. Emily seemed distracted, almost distant, as she cleaned a table near the window. He walked over and sat down. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone filled with genuine concern. Emily hesitated but eventually sighed. "I got a call about my father. Or rather, about what he left behind. It's complicated." Ryan, sensing it was a sensitive topic, chose his words carefully. "Do you want to talk about it?" She looked at him, weighing whether she could trust him. After a moment, she decided to share part of the truth. "My father was a powerful man, but not a good one. He hurt a lot of people in the name of money. When he died years ago, I tried to cut all ties with what he represented, but now it seems he left something for me, something I'm not sure I want to accept." Ryan listened intently, feeling a deep connection to her struggle. He knew exactly what it felt like to carry the weight of a powerful family's expectations. "Do you think accepting it will change you, or tie you to the past?" Emily shook her head, conflicted. "I don't know. Sometimes I think this money could help build something good, but at the same time I don't want my name tied to his." Ryan felt an urge to encourage her. "Emily, whatever you decide, make sure it's for you and for Jack, not for what people might think. If this could give you the freedom to pursue your dreams, maybe it's worth considering." Emily smiled, grateful for his support. "Maybe you're right, it's just hard." That night, as Ryan walked back to the hotel, guilt weighed heavily on him. Emily had opened up about an important part of her life, yet he continued to hide the truth about his own. The story she shared about her father resonated with him in an unexpected way. He knew it was time to be honest, but he didn't know where to start. On the other hand, Emily was also restless. Ryan's words echoed in her mind. She felt as though she had found someone who understood her struggles, even without knowing all the details. The next day, Ryan decided it was time to share more about himself. He invited Emily for a walk on the beach, something they hadn't done together yet. With the sunset as their backdrop, he finally opened up. "Emily, I need to be honest with you. I haven't been completely truthful about why I'm here." She stopped walking, looking at him with curiosity and a bit of apprehension. "What do you mean?" Ryan took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "I come from a very wealthy family. My father owns one of the largest tech companies in the country, and they wanted me to marry someone as part of a business deal." Emily blinked, surprised. "You are running away from an arranged marriage?" "Yes," Ryan admitted, feeling the weight of his confession. "They wanted me to marry the daughter of an oil tycoon. She's 18 years older than me, and I barely know her. It was purely a strategic decision. I couldn't accept it, so I came here to figure out what to do." Emily was silent for a moment, processing what she had just heard. She had known Ryan wasn't ordinary, but she hadn't expected something like this. So you're rich, and heir to a huge company, and you ran away from all of it to come to Fairhaven? Ryan chuckled nervously. Yeah, it sounds crazy, I know. Emily shook her head. No, I get it. I think in some ways, we're both running from something, aren't we? Ryan looked at her, feeling a wave of relief. I think so. The bond between Ryan and Emily continued to grow, but there was still an unspoken weight in the air, an invisible burden they both carried. Ryan had shared part of his story, but Emily still wasn't comfortable revealing the secret that had haunted her for years. She knew she was getting closer to Ryan, and it scared her. She feared that when he learned the whole truth, he might not see her the same way. A few days later, Emily received another call from her father's attorney. This time, he was more persistent. Emily, this is the final notice. If you don't attend the board meeting, you'll lose any claim to the estate. That includes the fund that could secure your brother's future. The lawyer paused before adding, I understand that your father wasn't a perfect man, but this money is yours by right. Think about it. Emily hung up the phone with trembling hands. She knew that accepting the estate could pay for Jack's college, but it would also mean associating her name with her father's legacy, a man who had destroyed lives in his pursuit of power. As she wrestled with this decision, Ryan showed up at the cafe that afternoon. He immediately noticed something was wrong. You look worried. Is everything okay? Emily hesitated. For a moment, she considered changing the subject, but she decided to trust him. It's about my father. He left me an estate, but accepting it means reopening a past I've spent years trying to forget. Ryan leaned in slightly, his expression filled with genuine support. Emily, you don't have to carry the burden of what your father did. If this can help you and Jack, maybe it's something worth considering. She looked at him with a sad smile. You make it sound so simple, but it's not. My father wasn't just a businessman. He was dangerous. A lot of people suffered because of him. I grew up seeing it firsthand, and that's why I walked away. I don't want my name tied to that, but at the same time, I feel like I'm letting Jack down if I don't take this opportunity. Ryan was quiet for a moment, taking in her words. He understood the weight of expectations and mistakes of a powerful family. Emily, you're not your father. What you do with that money could be something good, something that changes the story. Emily was thoughtful, but still unsure. Maybe you're right, but I need time to figure this out. Later that night, Emily went for a walk along the beach, hoping to clear her mind. As she walked, flashes of her past came rushing back. Lavish dinners, tense arguments between her parents, and the day her father was arrested on charges of fraud and extortion. She had spent years running from that past, rebuilding her life from what little was left, and now it was all crashing back like a wave. As she walked, Ryan found her, visibly concerned. I had a feeling you'd be here, he said, joining her on the sand. Emily sighed, gazing out at the sea. Sometimes I feel like I'm caught between two worlds, the one I was forced to leave behind and the one I've worked so hard to build now. Ryan sat beside her. I understand that more than you might think. I feel trapped too, between what my family expects of me and what I really want for myself. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the waves. Finally, Emily broke the quiet. I've never told anyone here, but my father was Richard Coleman. Ryan's eyes widened in recognition. The name was instantly familiar. Richard Coleman had been an oil tycoon at the center of one of the country's biggest corporate scandals. His downfall had destroyed countless families, and his story had dominated the news. Emily continued, her voice unsteady. When he was arrested, I was 20. I lost everything overnight. My mom fell into depression and passed away not long after. I had to raise Jack on my own, and all I wanted was to escape his name, his shadow. Ryan felt a deep wave of empathy. He knew what it was like to be defined by his family's choices, but he couldn't imagine the depth of what Emily had endured. Emily, you've been through so much, and yet you've built something good here. That says a lot about who you really are. Emily looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. But what if taking this money makes me like him? What if people see me the same way they saw him? Ryan took her hand firmly. You're not your father. What he did doesn't define you, and if this money can give Jack the future he deserves, maybe it's time to use it for something good. Emily looked at Ryan, feeling a mix of relief and fear. He was the first person who truly seemed to understand the weight of her dilemma, and that made her trust him even more. Let's have a little fun for those who read the comments. Write "cola cola" in the comments. Only those who make it this far will get it. Now, back to the story. In the days that followed, Emily began seriously considering the idea of accepting the inheritance. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she felt increasingly inclined to use it to create a better future for herself and Jack. Meanwhile, Ryan remained by her side, offering support and encouragement. At the same time, Ryan wrestled with his own unresolved issues. He hadn't yet revealed everything about his life. He wondered if Emily would see him differently once she knew the full truth, especially the reason he had come to this quiet town in the first place. Emily received an email from the lawyer confirming that the board meeting was scheduled for the following week. She knew it would be a turning point in her life. Meanwhile, Ryan sat alone in his hotel room, staring at the wedding ring his parents had chosen for Olga. He reflected on how much his life was about to change. The secrets they both carried were on the verge of colliding, and it would put everything they had at stake. In the days leading up to the board meeting, Emily's thoughts were consumed by what lay ahead. Ryan's words echoed in her mind, "You're not your father." Despite the pain and shame her past carried, she began to see a possibility for redemption. Perhaps using the money could be a way to rewrite her family's story and build something positive from its ruins. At the same time, Ryan was facing his own internal battles. He knew he was falling for Emily, but the secret of his past held him back. He had shared parts of the truth, but not all of it. Emily knew he was running from an arranged marriage, but she didn't know how close he was to losing everything if he didn't return to the life his parents had planned for him. On the morning of the board meeting, Emily felt the need for clarity. Before heading out, she asked Ryan to meet her at Seaside Cafe. She wanted to hear his thoughts one more time to gather the courage to face what was ahead. "I'm nervous," Emily admitted as she stirred her coffee. "Part of me wants to cancel everything, to go back to the simple, predictable life here. But then I think about Jack and what this money could do for him." Ryan looked at her with kindness. "Emily, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward in spite of it. You're doing this for Jack, and that says so much about the kind of person you are." She smiled, grateful for his support. "You always know what to say." "Maybe it's because I'm learning from you," Ryan replied, a soft smile forming on his lips. He knew Emily was facing something far greater than he could imagine, but he also felt it was time to be honest with her. Before he could say anything more, Emily placed her hand over his. "Thank you, Ryan. I don't know if I'd have the courage to do this without you." At the meeting, Emily walked into the room with a heavy heart. The board of her late father's company was filled with vaguely familiar faces, men and women who had worked alongside her father and, in some cases, had helped him in his schemes. She held her head high, determined not to let them intimidate her. The lawyer explained the terms of the inheritance. It was a substantial amount, enough to pay for Jack's college and even fund the art studio Emily had always dreamed of opening. But the conditions were clear. She would need to take on a public role as an heir, representing the Coleman family at events and fulfilling certain obligations. When the lawyer finished, all eyes turned to Emily. "Miss Coleman, are you willing to accept the terms?" Emily took a deep breath, emotions swirling inside her. Suddenly, she remembered Ryan's words, "You are not your father." Drawing strength from them, she replied, "I'll accept, but under my own conditions. I want a portion of this money to go toward helping young artists from underprivileged communities. It needs to be used for something good." The room fell silent. The lawyer appeared surprised but nodded. "That can be arranged." Emily left the meeting feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. She knew there would be repercussions, but she also felt she was beginning something new, something that could change her life and Jack's forever. Meanwhile, Ryan was at the hotel, wrestling with his own internal battle. He knew he needed to tell Emily the full truth. He wasn't just an heir running from an arranged marriage. He was also on the brink of losing everything if he didn't return to his family. His parents had given him a final deadline, and it was quickly approaching. Ryan knew he was in love with Emily. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, authentic, brave, and with a strength that inspired him. But he feared that revealing the whole truth might cost him her trust. When Emily returned from the meeting, she went straight to the hotel to share what had happened. "I accepted," she said, her voice a mixture of nervousness and hope. "But with conditions. I want part of the money to go toward helping others, to create something positive." Ryan smiled, deeply impressed by her courage. "That's amazing, Emily. You did what felt right." She looked at him, still unsure. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me the courage to face this." Ryan knew this was the moment to come clean. He took her hands and drew a deep breath. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." The tone in his voice made Emily's smile fade. "What is it?" Ryan hesitated but knew he couldn't keep hiding. "My parents gave me a deadline. If I don't return and do what they want, agree to the arranged marriage, fulfill my family obligations, they're going to cut me off. I didn't tell you this before because I was scared. Scared you'd see me the same way you see your father." Emily stayed silent, processing his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but quiet. "So you're here to run away? But for how long, Ryan? What happens when the deadline comes?" Ryan didn't have an immediate answer. "I don't know. All I know is that since I got here, you've shown me what really matters. And I don't want to lose that. Lose you." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with conflicting emotions. She understood the weight of family expectations, but she also knew Ryan needed to make his own choices. "Ryan, I care about you, but you need to figure out who you are and what you want in life. You can't rely on me for that." Emily left the hotel, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts. They both knew they had reached a turning point. Emily had faced her past and made a decision, but Ryan still had to confront his own. His family's deadline was fast approaching, and he needed to decide if he was willing to give up everything for an uncertain future, or follow the path that had always been laid out for him. The conversation with Emily had left Ryan devastated. He knew she was right. He had to confront his past, make a definitive decision, and discover who he truly was. But the weight of his family's expectations and the fear of losing everything he'd ever known still held him back, like invisible chains. The next morning, Ryan woke up to his phone vibrating incessantly. It was his mother, Evelyn. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Ryan, where are you? It's been weeks, and your father is furious. You know what's at stake," Evelyn said, her tone cold and calculated. "I know, Mom," Ryan replied, trying to stay calm. "But I can't come back. Not for what you're asking me to do." Evelyn sighed, as though dealing with a stubborn child. "Do you think you can run away forever? Life doesn't work like that, Ryan. You have responsibilities. If you're not back by the end of the week, you're out. There won't be a second chance." "Maybe that's what I need," Ryan answered, his voice firmer than he expected. He hung up before she could respond, feeling a mix of relief and fear. Meanwhile, Emily was dealing with her own emotions. Even though she had faced the board meeting and made a decision about her father's estate, she couldn't get Ryan out of her mind. She knew he was wrestling with the same dilemmas she had faced for years, choosing between what was expected and what he truly wanted. Later that afternoon, as Emily worked at the cafe, Jack approached her. He noticed she was more distracted than usual. "Is everything okay with Ryan?" he asked casually. Emily hesitated. "He's going through a tough time. I think he's trying to figure out what he really wants." Jack studied her for a moment before speaking. "You like him, don't you?" Emily smiled faintly but didn't answer. She knew the answer, but she also knew Ryan had to make his choice on his own. She couldn't be the reason he ran from his problems. At the hotel, Ryan sat on the balcony, staring out at the ocean as he wrestled with his doubts. He knew he needed to take action. Picking up his phone, he called his father, Marcus. "Dad, I need to talk to you," Ryan said, his voice serious. "Finally," Marcus replied, his tone dry. "I hope this means you're coming back home." Ryan took a deep breath. "I'm not going to marry Olga. I'm not going to live the life you've planned for me." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line before Marcus spoke. "So you're ready to be cut off? To lose everything I've built for you?" "That's not what I want, Dad," Ryan said, keeping his voice steady. "But I can't keep living on your terms. I need to find my own path." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Your own path? Away from the company? Away from the family? Good luck, Ryan. Let's see how long you last without everything I've given you." Ryan hung up, feeling a strange mix of freedom and emptiness. He knew this decision meant losing everything he'd known, but for the first time, he felt in control of his own life. The next day, Ryan decided it was time to talk to Emily. He went to the seaside cafe and found her serving coffee to a group of customers. When she saw him, her expression shifted from surprise to caution. "Can we talk?" Ryan asked, his tone serious. Emily hesitated before nodding. "Jack, can you take over for a while?" she asked her brother, who readily agreed. They left the cafe and walked along the beach. The sound of the waves was comforting, but the weight of the conversation ahead hung in the air. "I've made my decision," Ryan said at last, looking directly at her. "I told my father I'm not going back. I'm not marrying Olga. They're going to cut me off, and I'll lose everything." Emily was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. "And are you okay with that?" Ryan smiled, though there was a shadow of sadness in his eyes. "I'm still processing it, but yes, for the first time, I feel like I'm making a decision that's truly mine." "What are you going to do now?" Emily asked, a mix of curiosity and concern in her voice. "I'm not entirely sure," Ryan admitted, "but I want to start over, build something for myself. And I want to stay here, if you'll have me." Emily looked at him, her eyes reflecting conflicting emotions. She understood how much this decision meant to him, but she also knew Ryan was still figuring out who he was. "Ryan, I like you," she said finally, "but you need to be sure you're doing this for you, not for me. I can't be the reason you leave everything behind." Ryan held her hands, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm doing this because I have to, but yes, you're part of it. You've shown me what it means to be true to myself, and I don't want to lose that." Emily felt a wave of emotion, but knew they still had much to figure out. "All right, Ryan, we'll figure this out together. But no more secrets?" Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of his decision start to lift. For the first time, he had hope for a future that was truly his own. The days that followed were a mix of relief and anxiety for both Ryan and Emily. Ryan had left behind the crushing expectations of his family, but the future was uncertain. He needed to figure out how to start over and build something that truly represented him. Emily, meanwhile, was dealing with the fallout of her decision to accept her father's inheritance. While she knew it was the right choice to secure Jack's future and pursue her own dreams, the stigma of the Coleman name was beginning to resurface. News of her connection to the disgraced oil tycoon spread through the town, and she noticed judgmental stares from some people as she walked through the streets. One morning at the cafe, Emily was organizing orders when a customer, who had clearly read about her in the local paper, commented loudly, "Well, look at that, the heiress of the oil king. Seems like not everyone has to work hard for what they get." Emily froze for a moment, feeling her face flush. Before she could respond, Ryan, who was seated nearby, stepped in. "If you knew even half of what this woman has been through, you'd think twice before speaking," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "Some people work harder than you can imagine, even when life tries to knock them down." The customer glanced at Ryan, clearly uncomfortable, and left without saying another word. Emily gave Ryan a grateful look but realized she couldn't let him fight all her battles. "Thank you," she said later as they walked along the beach. "But I need to handle this on my own. If people want to talk, let them." "I'm not my father," Ryan smiled, admiring her strength. "I know that. But I also know you're not alone, Emily, and you don't have to be." At the same time, Ryan began exploring ways to rebuild his life. He knew he couldn't rely on Emily forever, so he started brainstorming ideas for a business of his own. Inspired by his time at the seaside cafe, he thought about starting small, perhaps something related to hospitality or local tourism. One afternoon, he shared his idea with Emily. "I've been thinking, what if I opened a bed and breakfast here in Fairhaven? Something small and cozy, but with a special touch. A place where people can find peace, just like I found here." Emily smiled, surprised and delighted. "That sounds perfect, Ryan, and I can help." Jack has always wanted to learn about business, and maybe I can use part of the money to invest in it. It could be a great start for all of us." Ryan was moved by her offer, but hesitated. "I don't want you to feel like you have to do this for me. I want to build this on my own." "It's not just for you," Emily replied sincerely. "It's for us, and for Fairhaven. This town deserves something special." As their plans began to take shape, another challenge arose. Ryan received an unexpected message from his mother, Evelyn. She was in Fairhaven and wanted to meet him. Although he knew it would lead to more confrontations, Ryan agreed. He knew he couldn't move forward without closing this chapter. They met at a beachfront restaurant. Evelyn was impeccably dressed as always, but her expression was more tense than Ryan remembered. "Are you really willing to throw everything away?" she asked bluntly. "I'm not throwing anything away, Mom," Ryan replied calmly. "I'm building something of my own." "And to do that, you have to turn your back on us?" she shot back, her voice wavering between anger and sadness. "Your father may be strict, but everything he's done has been for your benefit." "For my benefit?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "Forcing me into a loveless marriage, controlling every decision I've ever made? That's not for my benefit, Mom. It's for his." Evelyn sighed, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "I just want you to know that, whatever you decide, you'll always be my son. But you should also understand that by leaving the company, you're giving up a part of who you are." "No, Mom," Ryan said firmly. "I'm finding out who I am, and maybe it's time for you and Dad to do the same." Evelyn looked at him for a moment, and for the first time, Ryan saw something like understanding in her eyes. She nodded slowly, stood up, and walked away, leaving Ryan with a sense of closure. He knew the journey ahead would still be challenging, but he finally felt free from his family's hold. In the months that followed, life in Fairhaven began to change. With Emily and Jack's help, Ryan was able to open his inn. He named it Horizon, a tribute to the moment he decided his life needed a fresh start. The local community embraced the idea, and the business began to thrive. Emily was also pursuing her own dreams. Using part of the inheritance from her father, she opened a small art studio in town, where young artists could learn, create, and showcase their work. Jack, meanwhile, started helping Ryan manage the inn while preparing to enroll in college. The two worlds that Ryan and Emily represented finally aligned, not because of wealth or status, but because of love, mutual respect, and a shared desire to build something meaningful. One evening, Ryan prepared a surprise for Emily. He took her to the rooftop terrace of the inn at sunset, where a table was set with flowers and candles. Emily smiled, a little suspicious. "What's all this, Ryan?" He took a deep breath, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Emily, from the day I met you, you changed the way I see the world, and the way I see myself. You've taught me that love doesn't need perfection. It needs authenticity, and I want to spend the rest of my life being the best man I can be by your side." He knelt down and opened the box. "Will you marry me?" Emily, tears streaming down her face, laughed as she covered her mouth with her hand. "Yes, Ryan. Yes, 1,000 times yes." As the sun disappeared on the horizon, the two embraced and kissed passionately, ready to begin a new chapter together. Fairhaven wasn't just the place where they had found each other. It was where they had rediscovered themselves and chosen love above all else. The days following their engagement were filled with excitement and plans for the future. Ryan and Emily were determined to keep things simple and genuine, reflecting the new life they were building together. News of their engagement quickly spread through the small town of Fairhaven, and the residents, who had already welcomed Ryan and Emily into their community, eagerly offered to help plan the wedding. Emily wanted an intimate ceremony on the beach at sunset, with just their closest friends and Jack by her side. Ryan, who had always been surrounded by lavish, grand events organized by his family, felt relieved and excited by the simplicity of the plan. "This will be the wedding that really matters," he told Emily as they walked along the beach, hand in hand. "Just us, with the people who truly care about us." Meanwhile, Evelyn, Ryan's mother, reached out again. This time, her approach was different. She wasn't trying to persuade him to come back, but was asking to be part of his life. "Ryan, I know I've made mistakes. I know your father, and I put too much pressure on you. But I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." she said in an emotional phone call. Ryan was silent for a moment. He could tell Evelyn was sincere, but part of him still felt the pain of the stifling expectations she had imposed. "I need time to process this, Mom," he replied. "But if you're truly willing to change, you can come to the wedding. Just know that this is my life now, and there's no room for control or manipulation." "I understand," Evelyn said, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Ryan." The wedding day finally arrived. The Fairhaven beach was beautifully decorated with wildflowers and simple chairs arranged on the sand. Emily wore an elegant yet understated white dress she had adjusted herself with the help of a friend. Ryan wore a light-colored suit that perfectly matched the relaxed atmosphere of the ceremony. Jack stood proudly by Emily's side, a broad smile on his face. He had helped arrange every detail, from the flowers to the music. For him, this day wasn't just about his sister's wedding, it was also a fresh start for the small family they had created. Now let's add a little fun for those who read all the way to the end. Write hot dog in the comments. Only those who get here will understand. But now, back to the story. Ryan, on the other hand, was nervous but happy. He looked around at the faces gathered there, people he had barely known months ago but who were now part of his new community. When Emily began walking toward him, he felt a wave of emotion that nearly brought him to tears. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached the altar. "You're exactly where you're meant to be," Emily said with a warm smile. The ceremony was simple, yet deeply meaningful. The vows they exchanged were more than just words. They were heartfelt promises of respect, love, and mutual support. Emily spoke about how Ryan had helped her believe in love again, while Ryan promised to be the man she had always deserved, someone who valued her for who she truly was. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the applause was deafening. Ryan kissed Emily with such emotion that they both laughed, realizing everyone was watching. At the reception, held at the Horizons Inn, the atmosphere was light and joyful. The people of Fairhaven had brought homemade dishes, creating a true community feast. Evelyn made a quiet appearance, greeting Ryan and Emily with a hesitant hug. She remained silent for most of the event, observing how her son had found happiness far from the pressures she and Marcus had once imposed. However, when she had the chance, Evelyn approached Emily. "I know we didn't start off on the right foot," Evelyn said with a vulnerability Emily hadn't expected. "But I want you to know I'm grateful you're part of Ryan's life. He's happier than I've ever seen him." Emily smiled, recognizing the effort behind Evelyn's words. "He's found who he is, and that's all that matters." At the end of the evening, Ryan and Emily left the reception for a small cabin near the beach, where they would spend the night. As they gazed at the stars through the window, Emily turned to Ryan. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked, a shy smile on her face. "Make what?" Ryan replied, holding her hand. "Build this life together. Make it all work. Be happy." Ryan squeezed her hand firmly. "We already are. The rest is just the next chapter." In the months that followed, their lives continued to flourish. Ryan's Inn began attracting tourists from across the region, while Emily found purpose in her art studio, which became a haven for young talent. Inspired by everything that had happened, Jack started studying business, determined to help Ryan expand the inn. Evelyn began visiting Fairhaven more often, working to rebuild her relationship with her son. Marcus, however, remained distant, stuck in his rigid beliefs. Ryan no longer let it bother him. He had found his freedom and learned that true love was built on acceptance and authenticity. The day ended with Ryan and Emily sitting on the beach at sunset, a symbol of everything they had overcome. Emily held a small notebook, sketching ideas for a new painting, while Ryan planned the next steps to expand the inn. They were at peace, surrounded by the soothing sound of the waves and the comfort of being exactly where they were meant to be. "You know," Ryan said, looking at the horizon, "I never imagined that running away would lead me to the one place I truly belong." Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes fate has a funny way of putting us on the right path." And with that, they sat in silence, watching the sun disappear into the horizon, ready for whatever the future had in store, together. 5 years had passed since the day Ryan and Emily said "I do" on the Fairhaven beach. Their lives had transformed in ways they never could have imagined. yet everything seemed perfectly aligned with the dreams they had on that day. The Horizons Inn had become a regional landmark. With the help of Jack and the community, Ryan had expanded the business, turning the small inn into a welcoming and charming destination. It was known not just for its comfort and stunning ocean views, but also for the feeling of home it offered every guest. Ryan made it a point to be personally involved, greeting visitors and learning their stories. "You've turned this into something incredible," Emily said to him one evening as they walked through the property, softly lit with string lights. "With our hands," Ryan corrected, smiling. "None of this would have been possible without you. You gave me the courage to start over." Emily's art studio had also flourished. What began as a small space where she painted and taught local children had grown into a bustling cultural center. Artists from across the region came to learn, exhibit, and collaborate. Emily herself had started selling her work, and to her surprise, some of her paintings had been purchased by prominent collectors. One day, while organizing an art exhibit at the studio, Emily noticed Jack, now 21, helping young artists set up their work. He had become a symbol of resilience and growth, inspired by his sister's strength and Ryan's determination. "You're doing an amazing job, Jack," Emily said proudly. "I learned from the best," he replied with a smile. Evelyn, Ryan's mother, had also found her place in their lives. She started visiting Fairhaven regularly, always bringing small gifts or ideas to improve the inn. Though she still carried herself with a refined air, Evelyn had changed. She was more open, less critical, and had come to appreciate the simplicity and authenticity that Ryan and Emily had built. During one visit, Evelyn sat with Emily on the porch, watching the ocean. "You've truly found something special here," she said with genuine admiration. "I never imagined my son could be this happy away from everything we built." Emily looked at her, recognizing the effort behind those words. "Sometimes happiness lies in the simplest things," she replied, "and Ryan needed to figure that out on his own." Evelyn nodded with a smile, "And you were the right person to help him see that." But the biggest transformation was between Ryan and Emily. Their love had grown even deeper, not just in moments of joy, but also in the challenges they had faced together. They had learned to trust each other, lean on one another, and celebrate the small victories of everyday life. One evening, as they stood on the beach, Ryan held Emily's hands and pulled her close. "I don't know if I've ever thanked you enough for believing in me," he said, looking into her eyes, "for showing me I could be more than I thought I could be." "You did that yourself, Ryan," Emily said with a smile. "I just gave you a little push." Ryan chuckled softly. "Well, that was the most important push of my life." But life had one more surprise in store for them. Emily started noticing changes in her body: fatigue, morning sickness, and an insatiable craving for apple pie. At first, she thought it was just the stress of her new responsibilities, but after a quick test, the truth was clear. She was pregnant. She decided to share the news with Ryan in a special way. During a dinner on the inn's porch, with the sound of the waves in the background, she handed him a small package. "What's this?" Ryan asked, curious. "Open it and see," Emily said, trying to hold back her smile. Ryan slowly unwrapped the package to reveal a tiny pair of baby socks. He was silent for a moment, staring at the gift before it clicked. His eyes filled with tears as he looked at Emily. Are we having a baby?" Emily nodded, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "Yes, Ryan, we're going to be parents." Ryan hugged her tightly, unable to hold back his tears of joy. "I don't even know what to say," he whispered. This is more than I ever dreamed of." The following months were filled with preparations. The Fairhaven community came together to help the couple get ready for the baby's arrival. Jack took on the task of assembling the crib, while Evelyn eagerly helped Emily decorate the nursery. Ryan, determined to be the best father he could, balanced his work at the inn with caring for his growing family. When the day finally arrived, Ryan was by Emily's side, holding her hand as she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Sophie, a name that meant wisdom and reflected everything they had learned together over the years. A few months later, Ryan and Emily sat on the sand, Sophie cradled in Emily's arms. Jack ran along the beach, flying a kite, while Evelyn chatted with local residents, something once unimaginable for her. The Horizon Inn stood gleaming in the background, a symbol of everything they had built together. "I never thought life could be this good," Ryan said, looking at Emily and Sophie. "But now, I can't imagine it any other way." Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "You were always meant to find this, Ryan. You just needed the right place, the right people, and a little courage." As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat quietly, soaking in the moment. Life would still bring challenges, but they knew that together they could face anything. After all, Fairhaven wasn't just where their lives had changed, it was where their hearts had finally found a home. The years passed, but the essence of Fairhaven, with its peaceful beaches and welcoming community spirit, remained unchanged. Ryan and Emily, now parents to 3 children, Sophie, Benjamin, and little Elliot, lived a full life, surrounded by love, achievements, and challenges they embraced together. The Horizons Inn continued to thrive, gaining a reputation as a retreat for those seeking peace and inspiration. Artists, writers, and people looking for a fresh start found more than just a comfortable stay there. They discovered stories that connected with their own. Many guests left saying the place held a certain magic, a kind of energy that renewed their souls. Emily, meanwhile, had become a respected name in the art world. What began as a small studio had grown into the Fairhaven Arts Center, a hub for creativity that hosted annual exhibitions, attracting artists from across the state and even abroad. One of her most famous paintings, titled Horizon of the Heart, was purchased by a renowned collector and displayed in a major gallery. However, Emily turned down offers to move to a big city. For her, Fairhaven was home, the place where her soul could truly flourish. Their children brought even more joy to their lives. Sophie, at just 8 years old, already showed a natural talent for painting, often joining her mother in the studio. Benjamin, the adventurous one, loved exploring the beach and creating fantastical stories about pirates and hidden treasures. And Elliot, still a baby, was the center of attention, bringing laughter and light to everyone around him. Evelyn, now a proud grandmother, had also changed. After years of visiting Fairhaven, she eventually moved to the town, buying a home near the inn. "I never thought I'd find peace in a place so far from the hustle and bustle," she once admitted to Emily. "But I think Fairhaven has a way of healing people." Although Evelyn still carried her refined demeanor, she adapted well to the simpler life and found purpose helping Emily with events at the Arts Center. Her relationship with Ryan had blossomed, filled with moments of laughter and shared memories that once seemed impossible. But not everything was easy. Challenges arose along the way. Storms occasionally damaged parts of the inn, and there were periods of financial uncertainty when visitor numbers dropped during the winter months. Even so, Ryan and Emily learned to lean on their friends and the community to get through tough times. It was during one of these difficult periods that Ryan made a bold decision. He began organizing retreats focused on reflection and creativity at the inn, inviting people from across the country to attend workshops led by Emily and other local artists. The idea was a success, not only keeping the business alive during slower months, but also putting Fairhaven on the map as a cultural destination. One evening, as they walked along the beach with Sophie, Benjamin, and Elliot running ahead, Ryan and Emily reflected on everything they had built. "Do you think we dreamed too big?" Ryan asked, gazing at the sea, which shimmered under the starlight. Emily smiled, taking his hand. "I don't think it's possible to dream too big. We dreamed enough to find each other. And that's what matters." Ryan looked at her, feeling the same emotion he had when he first met her at the seaside cafe. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them together, to help them discover who they truly were. "You changed my life," he said sincerely. "You changed mine," Emily replied. "And together, we've changed the lives of so many others. That's what makes it all worthwhile." As time went on, Fairhaven became an even more special place. Sophie, Benjamin, and Elliot grew up surrounded by the love of their parents and the support of a community that always stood by them. Sophie, in particular, decided to follow in her mother's footsteps and pursue a career as an artist, while Benjamin nurtured his passion for storytelling, and Elliot, ever curious, developed a love for science and nature. On the 20th anniversary of the Horizons Inn, Ryan and Emily hosted a grand celebration. Friends, family, and even former guests returned to join in. Jack, now married and living in another city, made sure to attend with his wife and children, reminiscing about the days when he helped his sister and Ryan build their dreams. During the event, Ryan stepped onto a small stage set up outside the inn and gave a heartfelt speech. "This place is not just an inn," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "It's the heart of everything we've built together. It's proof that, with love, courage, and support, we can overcome anything." Emily, holding his hand, added, "Fairhaven isn't just the place where we found our home. It's the place where we found ourselves. And we're so grateful to each of you for being part of this journey." Now older, Ryan and Emily sat on the same spot on the beach, watching the sunset as their children and grandchildren played in the sand. Life had passed, but the essence of who they were, dreamers, survivors, partners, and, above all, a family, remained unchanged. "Do you think we've done everything we could?" Ryan asked, looking at Emily. "I think we've done more than we ever dreamed of," she replied with a peaceful smile. And so, as the sun set once again on the horizon, Ryan and Emily knew their story didn't end there. It would live on, not just in Fairhaven, but in the hearts and memories of everyone they had touched, because the love, courage, and authenticity they built together were timeless. What do you think about Ryan's parents disinheriting him for not following their wishes? Share your thoughts in the comments. How would you rate this story on a scale from 0 to 10? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with all our stories, and be sure to check out more heartfelt stories by clicking here on the end screen.